so what's up, everybody? This is Ruben Garcia, and this is a beautiful day. And today on the Proven by Ruben podcast, we have Brian Pate. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? How are you?
How are you?
Good to see you.
Awesome. So if you could, tell everyone who you are, what you do, how you do it, and all that good jazz.
My name is Brian Pate. I live in the town of Wake Forest, North Carolina, where the college used to be. We always have to explain to people we're about 20 minutes north of Raleigh, and Wake Forest is where Wake Forest University used to be before it was moved in 1956. The last graduating class was 56.
Wow.
And so I'm from up there. I am a realtor. I help people buy and sell homes. I am a real estate instructor for the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. I teach for Brian Pate Seminars, shameless plug, brianpateseminars.com for all of your CE needs.
Perfect.
I am an investment property owner. I teach for the Superior School of Real Estate. I am a part owner of Beacon Title Insurance Company, and I am a serial entrepreneur is what my father calls me. So I love to start businesses. I spent 25 years in the DJ business. Do you want? I'll do my radio voice for you later.
Yes, I was looking forward to that.
We got to pop it up. So
go for it, man.
So that's about the extent of it. And most important job I have is I am dad to two awesome daughters. I have a 19-year-old daughter at Appalachian State University. Go Mountaineers.
Woo.
And I have a 14-year-old daughter that is a freshman at Heritage High School, where I am also the PA announcer for football and basketball. Other than that, I don't have much to do.
Your calendar doesn't seem full at all. Seems like you have plenty of time.
I love having a full calendar. It's boring if it's not. I get more tired sitting around with nothing to do, waiting at the doctor's office, for example, makes me more tired than rushing for 12 hours.
I agree. And I was just talking to someone yesterday, and they said, hey, listen, I don't know if I have enough time to do something that we were talking about. I said, okay, great. Let me see your calendar. Mm-hmm. And that was it.
Yes.
Because a lot of people do not plug in the one thing that they need to be focusing on in that time increment to be very purposeful to get the activities they need to get done.
You know, one of the things I always talk about in my training classes is how colorful is your calendar?
Yeah.
And you have to color code them. So on my calendar, for example, anything red means that nothing can be placed over the top of it.
Okay.
Because I've got two admins that also work with my calendar occasionally.
Sure. And
so if it's in red, nothing stops it. So
stay away.
My Sundays are always with my church and my kids. So they're always blocked, and then whenever I'm a huge college football fan, so all of my Saturdays, I'm going to spend the first 13 weeks of college football season at a football game this year.
Nice.
So those are all blocked, needless to say.
Perfect.
And then everything else in the calendar is color-coded based on what it is, whether it's teaching or training or a meeting one-on-one with a potential client or a listing presentation, et cetera. And so that's why I ask people, how colorful is your calendar?
Yeah, no doubt.
And the biggest mistake that a lot of agents make is they book 1 week in advance. I am an advocate for booking a month in advance. You need to be 30 days ahead. And I know you've talked about it before on this podcast, and we talk about it a lot in training. What you do today results in 90 days.
Yep,
so
no
happy
doubt.
New Year. Here we are in October.
Yep, exactly. So what would you say is the first thing, the one thing that someone should put on their calendar? What's the first thing that, if they're getting introduced to calendars, what is the first thing they should be putting on their calendar?
Your day off.
Okay. Why?
Because it's always the most important thing. The real estate business, I've heard people before say, I think I'm going to try the real estate business. You don't try the real estate business, it tries you.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it can eat you alive. I remember years ago, my wife had taken me to a place in Raleigh called Mountain Jack's. It was my favorite restaurant in Raleigh. Unfortunately, it's closed now. But she took me there for my birthday. And I remember sitting there on my birthday, more worried about the closing that was taking place the next day rather than being engaged in the moment.
Right.
And that was a real eye-opener for me when I realized there was nothing wrong with the closing. It was just me worrying about it. And it took me a long time of, I had a coach through MAPS coaching named Mika Fox, and Mika helped me to relax.
Right.
She told me, don't worry about things. They're going to happen, and you can't control what happens. Control what you can,
Right.
and quit worrying about the rest. Just be quick to react and be the voice of reason whenever anything blows up.
That's right. And some of the people that I'm working with, one of the first things that we focus on when it comes to our calendar is building what we call a my day, why day.
Yes.
So what is your why? Maybe enjoy it that day, but either way, it's your day. Don't set any appointments. You need to. And some people come in and they're just not that busy, and they say, well, I'm not going to plug that in. And so what's going to happen is you're not going to plug it in. You're going to get so busy and you're going to get burnt out.
Yes. Yes. Well, and the other thing that newer agents especially don't realize, there is one, if you're slow and you want to get busy, there is one surefire way to get a lead, and that is schedule a vacation and make a non-refundable deposit on the hotel room, and you will get a half a dozen calls the day before you're scheduled to leave.
That's right.
Because the most productive that real estate agents are, as a manager for God knows how long at this point, as a manager, I've noticed the most productive people is the day before they leave town on a vacation.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, and then it usually takes them a couple of days to get back into it once they return. But that day before vacation is always the most productive. It's why I go away for weekends on a regular basis.
Right.
I get more done on Thursdays before leaving on Friday for a college football weekend than I do in the 3 days prior.
Yeah.
I'm much more efficient.
Well, I do like that you look at how do I take care of myself first, right? So it lives in your calendar, but not only does it live in your calendar, it lives in profit as well to you, because thank you for coming today and being a rock star and masterminding with our crew here today. But also what you pulled up, which you got out of the book, Profit First, I believe, is pay yourself first too.
Yeah, pay yourself first. And that's one of those things. My grandfather and my dad, who were big influences in my life, always told me to pay myself first. And I didn't really learn that concept until about 7 or 8 years ago, and we've been really applying it.
Right.
There were times where I was doing it and I was doing it well, but there were other times that I was so worried about every bill coming in that I was just surviving. And reading the book Profit First made a huge difference for me recently. And the biggest part of it is somebody finally put into words what I'd been trying to figure out in my head.
Right.
And sometimes that's one of the great advantages of reading and listening. I don't actually read. I'm an audio guy.
Same here.
So I use Audible all the time.
Which is a write-off.
It's a write-off.
Yep.
It's a business expense,
Yep.
especially when I'm driving in my car, which is also a business expense.
Yep.
And when you're looking at the exercise today that we did, when you figure out what you're worth hourly, even when you're not working, I'm basically losing $200 an hour by being in the car and driving an hour.
Right.
And so we have to find some way to capitalize off of that. And the reading of the books brings clarity to many ideas. And a lot of times an author can give you the words that may not come to your mind. Those of us that are the high Ds, that's only 3% of us in the world are high Ds, because if there were more of us, we'd be at war all the time, because we all think we know the best way to do it. But sometimes finding the way to communicate it to others is the biggest challenge. We know what we want, but communicating that to somebody else is the most difficult part.
Who was the first person to introduce the power of books to you?
Well, my 5th grade language arts teacher was a lady named Joan Nance, who today I still keep up with her. We're
Great
friends
job.
on Facebook. And she put a book in my hand called The Yearling by an author named Marjorie Kennan Rawlings. And in 5th grade, this was a 785-page book with no pictures.
Whoa.
And
well, this would be an interesting story. Let's see how this happens.
Yeah, and coming from a newspaper family, I'm the 5th generations of 4 generations of newspaper guys. And so I'm used to reading my news in headlines and first paragraphs. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, give me bullets, don't give me paragraphs.
Put it all in the subject line.
And so I started reading this book, and I was really bored with it. And we lived in Myrtle Beach at the time, and my mother and father found what I was reading and found Marjorie Kennan Rawlings' home, who the author was in Florida. And, of course, we've got family in Florida, so we actually went down and went to her home where she wrote The Yearling. And that brought the book to life for me, because it just, when she was talking about the thicket that you could see from the porch looking southwest. I was looking at it.
Right.
And all of a sudden I figured out, wait a minute, books can paint a picture in your head. Now, I wasn't very good about reading all of them. I'm one of those guys that I get about halfway through a book and I'm like, okay, get to the point.
Right.
You know, I'd much rather, if I can read the background in 30 minutes and then read the big twist in the middle and then the how does it end, you know, it's great.
Right.
My most recent one that I read, and I can't think of the author's name right now, but it's a book called Our House. It's fiction, and I very rarely read fiction. But the book was awesome, and I'll think of the author's name here in a minute. But it's a story about a husband who gets blackmailed and sells the house out from under his wife while she's on vacation in order to keep himself from going to jail for something that he's done. And it's an amazing book. If you want to know why we have title insurance, read the book. It's awesome. But it's called Our House, and I'm still blank on the book. So if I pipe up in the middle of this and say...
Literally just yell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Confuse the heck out of everyone.
Everybody will freak out, especially if they fast forward it anywhere. They'll be like, where the heck did that come from?
So we are, and believe me, man, the last podcast ran for 2.5 hours, and I think that you and we could put in some work on a podcast with everything that you have and the value that you could bring. However, we're cut down a little bit today, so you have your hands in a lot, correct? And if you could paint that picture for us for what, like you have the team, you have, I believe, a title company. All right. Yep. So run through that. What do you have your hands in right now?
Okay. So the first thing and the primary thing is the real estate company. We have 11 team members.
Okay.
We have, listing administrative side. We have a buyer administrative side here in North Carolina. In order to operate in what's called designated agency, we have to separate those. If you only have one admin, then the whole team's in dual agency, basically, because they're seeing both sides of the contract if they're licensed. So we've got that. Then we've got 2 OSAs. That's Jay Derrick and Kevin Stanley. And their job is basically they're hunting. They're hunting for leads, finding people that want to buy or sell a home in the next 120 days.
Right.
We have myself and Scott LaRue are the listing specialists. I do more in Wake Forest and North Raleigh. Scott does a lot of land. He's a land specialist.
Okay.
So about 70% of his listings are land, and he's really good at it. He sits on the Board of Adjustments in Franklin County up in Lewisburg, Kittrell, and Youngsville area. Very knowledgeable about the development process. So we work with each other, and he also owns investment properties, so we trade ideas on that.
Okay.
In addition to that, we have Marcia Smith, who is our lead buyer specialist. This is her 3rd year with the team.
Okay.
Met her in a post-licensing class, liked her, and told her I wanted to hire her. She wanted to work on her own for a while. She spent 3 months working on her own. She says, I'm ready to come on the team.
Where's that leverage?
Where's that leverage?
Yeah.
And so she came on board. She comes from a background of hotel motel management. She was the desk manager at the Washington Duke Inn, so she's used to dealing with the high-end client as well as the low-end client. She's very good at the training from that standpoint. Then we have buyer's agents, Chris Barr, who's been with us right at a year. As a matter of fact, next month I think is his 1-year anniversary. It's either this month or next month. We have Donna Burnett, who's a part-time agent that's been with me for about 2.5 years. Okay. She comes from the wedding event planning business.
This is all buyer side?
This is all buyer side. And then we have a buyer specialist named William Coronado, and Willie is actually bilingual, speaking Spanish also. And we have came from Pinehurst. And we gave him met him at a post-licensing class, talked with him, liked his style. There was a win-win in him coming to Wake Forest. So he actually moved from Pinehurst to come work with us, and he's been outstanding. We've got a whole separate section on our website for Spanish-speaking audience, and all of the leads go straight to him. So he will occasionally step across into the list side when it's a Spanish-speaking client, because we don't want to. It's complicated enough transaction when you understand the language.
No doubt. Yeah.
To have someone, if you're speaking in Spanish, the word listing agent doesn't translate. So you have to be able to understand that it's a representative of the seller and a representative of the buyer in the way that those are done.
So as you built your real estate team, did you run the MREA model one level? Not the first time, because it sounded like you brought on buyer's agents first, which we see that as
first
being
time
a big
was
challenge.
a massive screw up because I hired 2 buyer's agents with 1 part-time admin and didn't have enough business for anybody to do at the time. It was a real screw up. And one of the buyer's agents ended up being a part-time agent, and now she's just hanging her license with us so that she can send us referrals. The other one ended up leaving the team and going to another high-producing team where she was getting leads handed to her.
Right.
And my rationale is a little bit different because our team, we don't sell buyer's agents on joining the team because we're giving them leads.
Right.
We're selling them on the team support and the systems that we have so that they can spend more time efficiently lead generating.
Right.
So that was the biggest mistake that I made in the business. When we reset, for us, 2014 was the great reset.
Yeah.
We then hired we hired two different administrative assistants, and that was Logan and Stacy. It's the same two people that have been with me now. And they are like, we jokingly refer to them as my work wives because I spend more time talking to them than I do my own wife, unfortunately. But Logan manages the listing side. We have a policy on the team that came from my football or my soccer coach in high school. He said, know your role and shut your hole. So I try to get out of the way a lot of the time and not mess it up by trying to help.
Makes sense.
And so the systems are in place. I didn't write any of my systems. The administrative staff wrote the systems because they're the ones that are applying them. That's their one thing. It's a totally different setup. And the team, I feel like the team's capacity right now is probably around 150, 160 transactions a year.
Sure.
But we have, Gary would get me for that. And we have kids. Logan has two children, both in high school. Stacy has two daughters one's in middle school, one's in elementary. So the highest priority activity for all of my team members is family first.
Yes.
So they don't have to ask for a day off. They tell me when they're taking days off. And I don't really care whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 5 weeks, as long as they let me know.
Sure.
And they cover each other when necessary.
Yes.
So the one thing I ask them is not to be out more than one day at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay, so, and that team is produced, we are at 101?
We closed our 100th transaction yesterday, and 101 was scheduled for today, so I'll let you know what happens.
Let's just throw it out there that it closed.
Slam dunk, right?
Yeah. Easy peasy.
Just, come on, LeBron.
Yep.
Boom.
Okay, great. So you have...
I need some... They can't see the powder if I throw it up on this. So have to figure out a way to make that come through.
Yeah.
Here, how's that?
You know it's going to sound... For you guys watching on video, I apologize. But you won't...
I forgot we were on video. I've gotten comfortable.
And please, get comfortable. So now it looks like we got team lead, Rainmaker, you.
Yep.
3 admin. No, 2 admin.
2 admin. 2 OSA.
2 OSA.
Yep.
2 listing specialists.
Correct.
And then 4
buyer
agents.
Specialists. Yep.
Okay, so... Now, obviously, no ISAs? Who's controlling the leads?
No ISA.
What was the reason behind that?
The leads come directly to me on the list side, or the leads, when they come in off the website or something like that, when it's not a direct to the agent, comes into an info@Pate Realty email address that hits both listing specialists and Logan. And whoever gets it first takes it.
Okay.
The buyer leads come straight through the lead buyer specialist for distribution because she's the trainer.
Yep.
What her job is to match up personalities. She's very well trained in the disc profile.
Perfect.
So she's listening to certain words, certain phrases, and the way people are answering questions, and to match them up with the proper buyer's agent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it worked. You know, there are a lot of teams that have the lead receiver. But the way our team is set up, because we're not fishing for leads off of the website.
Right.
You know, we want to earn the click by creating value.
Sure.
So most of the leads that we get they're big time. Our closure rate on online leads is like 47%, whereas most agents are in the 3 and 4% at the most.
Yep. And they're paying for them.
And they're paying for them. We're not paying for them. Our entire team operating expenses are less than $18,000 a month, all inclusive.
That's packages for the salaries, all that good stuff.
That's everything.
Wow.
That's insurance, my car, the truck that we use, all the pay, everything. It's everything.
And that's why, man, I wish the people that were listening could really see this value, was here for this value, would have been great with the mastermind that you had. And that's why I asked who would like to have you back? Because I think that's a totally different conversation to get a little bit deeper on the back end, because it's kind of sexy to talk about the front end and the buyer's agent, listing specialist, but where the real magic happens and where you were talking about living off 30% and all that good stuff is what we should be focusing on the back end and stuff. And that's why I would love for you to come back to talk to everyone about that.
Well, and I think the big thing about it is a lot of times when you talk, and team leaders do this a lot in recruiting. And when I was a team leader, I did it too. You talked about the top couple of agents and these huge numbers.
Yeah.
Most people can't fathom that in any way, shape, or form. So if you got to really break it down, here's what it looks like if you do 20 transactions a year. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I do in my business planning clinics that I teach is that how to, if you take 50 listings a year, what does it look like? It's basically how to make $350,000 in a year.
Right.
Most agents never do that. But if you break that down and say, okay, instead of 50, how about 10? Can you do 20%?
Right.
Okay. So let's make $70,000 this year so that you can touch that number.
Right.
Because a lot of agents, I remember I made the comment to Logan on October 2nd this year. I looked at her, I said, we have made more gross commission income on October 1st and 2nd than I made in my first 2 years in the real estate business combined.
Whoa.
And that was 2 days. So, and we've had, we're at a point these days where we're having gross commission income months, 3 out of the last 6 months have been over $120,000 in gross commission.
Right.
Now, of course, I'm not getting all that. That's before the agent
Gross.
split. That's gross. Gross
Right.
Gross stinks.
Yes.
Gross stinks. Average sucks. Right. So,
Right.
but that's where we have to look at things and help newer agents to understand. A lot of times we can be guilty of showing these huge numbers. Show me the agent. We had a kid. My favorite story, if I may tell.
Go.
Kid named Hunter Johnson, who's at my office at Keller Williams Preferred in Raleigh, was in my pre-licensing class. He sat front corner left, and I could tell it was one of those that right off the bat you could tell he was going to be good.
He's in the PC program.
He's in the
I know exactly.
He's in the coaching program. And so Hunter was sitting there, and we were about 4 days into the class. And of course, I teach the real world along with the pre-licensing. And we had talked a little bit about, if you want to make $100,000, you can. You've just got to find a place that believes that their training can get you there.
Right.
So a recruiter came in one day for lunch. They provided lunch, and we gave him 15 minutes at the lunch break to talk about the company.
This should be interesting.
And so Hunter looked at the lady and said, well, my goal is to make $100,000 in my first year. What do you think of that? And she says, well, honey, and the name of the company and the person shall remain nameless. She looks at him and says, honey, I think you need to readjust your plans because most agents make about $20,000 to $25,000 in the first year. Hunter looked back at her and said, so what you're saying is your training can't get me there. And boom. I about fell out. She lost they did not recruit a single person out of that class with 35 people in it because of the way she answered that. If the company doesn't believe in their training, why in God's name should you believe in it?
Yep.
And to be quite honest with you, that's why I'm at Keller Williams.
Yeah.
And people ask me, why don't you just go out on your own, create your own company? Well, it's the relationships like you and teaching things like this make you understand things at a higher depth, and people hold you accountable to living what you teach.
That's right.
And that's where the benefit is. And you can't look at somebody and say, hey, did you make your 100 calls this week? And they say, no, did you? Mm-hmm. You better be able to answer yes on that.
Wow.
That was like really powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I
got to capture that.
I love the fact that, she basically stood up and said, here's the thing. I need you to stay average because my mindset is still average.
Correct.
And they saw right through it. And so what would because you shared this with me earlier, is that you coached with Grant Cardone.
I did.
So what would he say about average?
I'm probably not able to say that on the microphone.
I know.
I will tell you, Sell or Be Sold
is
probably my favorite business book ever written. I still listen to it once a year.
So what would you say is the top 3 things you pull out of that, knowing that you listen to it every year?
It's all mindset. It's basic. It's sometimes can I say ass?
No.
Okay. So sometimes you need a swift kick in the ass.
Yeah.
And that book does it for me.
Right.
And everybody asks me, what are the books that you recommend? Well, number one, the Bible. Read that one every once in a while because it's good for you to get grounded. When it comes to sales books, Sell or Be Sold is my primary one for mindset motivation. There's a book by Chet Holmes, Chet Holmes, Holmes. It's called The Ultimate Sales Machine. It's a very easy listen. It's about 200 pages long. It's not real long, but it talks about being able to deliver above what the consumer expects because the bar is so low these days.
That's right.
And it's an older book. It's not new. Profit First, as we've talked about, is a good one. The one thing is, for me, I have a new one thing every day.
Yes.
And I think
sometimes
a lot
every
of
hour.
Well, and I think a lot of people miss that. And when we talk about time blocking, and what we're basically talking about is what's your one thing for that time period.
100%.
And the other thing that I would tell you that I read is all of those people ask me all the time, where do you get all these great stats and these great stories and these graphics? Well, all of the emails that all of those realtors get and delete, I read them.
Right.
I spend I get up about 5:30 in the morning most days, and I spend the first half hour reading Inman News. I read the newspapers. I read, I get emails from mortgage lenders that have articles with results. I've got some stuff from Barry Habib through his company. But it's all details. I'm a stats geek. I love statistics because numbers don't lie.
That's right.
Numbers tell me what you're doing and what you're not doing. And
I love that.
The numbers that we're looking at from that standpoint are result numbers.
That's right.
And then what I'm doing is I'm tracking my activities.
That's right.
Because if I'm not doing the activities, I'm not going to get the results, so I don't need to track them.
So anybody that works with me just gave me a mental high five. I mean, anybody that comes in here, the first thing we do is drop numbers, right? Because that's going to expose exactly where the conversation needs to be. Even projecting.
Yes.
Right. And where we talk about more of the activity. So I love that. Yeah. I mean,
well, and it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I met a girl named Ginger Vereen. She's now Ginger Peters. Just got married.
Podcast, yeah.
I think she was on your podcast a couple months ago before she left. Before she left for her wedding, I should say. God love her. But she made the comment to me because I asked her, because when I joined, I had come out of being a broker in charge for 11 years.
Okay.
So I was getting back into sales all of a sudden after being out of sales. And I'd always told my wife, if I ever get back in sales, I know what not to do.
Right.
So what I went searching for was, what do I do?
Right.
And she said, track your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And so I track, my accountant gives me a profit loss statement and a balance sheet every month. And then we look over it quarterly together.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it really is. When the numbers start having more zeros behind them, it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
But it can also be very humbling because you realize, what a lot of people that are growing teams don't realize, your income stays around 30 to 35% of the team's gross until you start getting big enough that leads get distributed elsewhere and you spend more time managing the team and working on your business rather than working in your business. And all of a sudden your income's at 25%. It's the same dollar amount, but it's a lower percentage because you're spending more time elsewhere. But that's when the money becomes passive. And that's what all of my teaching focuses to. Is creating that passive opportunity.
That's right. And you create more time to look at those passive opportunities.
Right. And it can be the title insurance company. It can be the investment property. It can be profit share. I mean, with the nice thing about teaching all across the state is I've been able to recruit a pretty good first line through profit share that basically pays my cap every year. So my cap doesn't cost me anything. And so what we've ended up doing is the profit share check goes into a completely different account that is all about investing. And so we leverage that for growth purposes.
Right.
So we'll take $20,000 a year in profit share and we'll turn it into $35,000 by the end of the year by simple investments.
Right. And I love that. It's
my day trading Las Vegas money.
Hey, well, how much money did you have to spend in order to get that money in your world?
Nothing.
Nothing. What other investment where there's zero capital that you have to put in that you get a return every month?
What's the return on zero invested to $30,000? I mean, I don't know how you come up with that number.
But yeah, very cool. And just to go back to the numbers, love exposing businesses when it comes to the numbers, because it does two things. And one, I saved a team $24,000 in a year because we held the number accountable.
Correct.
So that was fun. But it also exposes a lot of opportunities within those in those numbers that we can scale up or scale down away from.
Well, and a lot of the time, the numbers that are being spent would be different if they were paying themselves first versus running the team first.
Right.
Because you scale back. If you don't have as much money for the budget, you scale back what you're doing. And it's no different than you and I when we were little. If we needed money, you went and mowed lawns, or you did odd jobs around the neighborhood, that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's, you got to learn to turn a buck, and the only way to do it is to work.
What's the next thing you're going to leverage in your business? Now the real estate business.
Yeah, I think that we'd like to get, I think a property management arm will be a necessity here in the next couple of years, because I do believe, I don't think we're going to see a massive recession like we saw 2006 through 2008, but I do think we are going to see a little bit of a pullback here. I think there are going to be people that bought their house in 2017 and 18 thinking they were going to get 6 and 7% appreciation in our market, and they're not going to be able to sell because they don't have enough equity to pay the commission rate on it. But what they will be willing to do is to have the property managed for a while. And so I think that gives us an opportunity. And then the other piece of that is, as an investor, that if one of my clients decides to sell their investment property, we can see the numbers and we know exactly what's wrong, because we look back through the data and see what repairs have been made, what's been deferred, and figure out what the true value of the property is, and probably buy into some equity, because they're not paying a commission in order to sell.
Right. So who's going to run that play for you guys?
Haven't decided that yet.
Yeah.
Still, that's the next.
Because that's a person, correct? Or will it be you, where you leverage a piece of
No, it will be someone else other than me.
Gotcha.
And what you have to look at, if you've ever read the book Traction, which is another one of my favorite books, Gino Wickman, his father Floyd taught me sweat hogs back in the 90s. But Gino's got a book called Traction, and it talks about your rocks each quarter, 3 rocks every quarter. Yeah. One of my rocks this quarter is the business plan and the organization and the setup of the rental company. And then next year, I always have my big rocks are in the fourth quarter, because I want them running by January 1. And I usually spend the week between Christmas and New Year's redoing my 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, and 15-year business plan.
Gotcha.
And my personal plan, even though they're just, when you get to the 5th year, they're just one page. But it's what I'd like to be doing at that point.
That's right.
So it's all got to be in place before Christmas, basically.
Right.
And of course, there are all kinds of opportunities for distraction at Christmas time. But to be able to, the fourth quarter is when my working on my business is really at its biggest fever pitch of the year.
That's right. So if we look back again, you have your hand in a few other projects besides your real estate team. Which one would you say is the one thing that you will never let go, or the one thing that you wish you could spend more time in that has the greatest return?
If I could spend more time on something, it'd be the work that I do in the schools in Wake Forest and the community service that I do. I'm not doing it because I've been arrested or anything, but I very much. I moved to Wake Forest in January of 1998 when there were only 8,000 residents, and now there are 43,000.
Oh, gosh.
And I love, because at the time I was the only DJ in town, I got asked to do all of the events.
Right.
And I got to the point where I couldn't do them for free, but I'd do them at half price. So I was guaranteed to be booked every weekend, and then I could find a nightclub date to make up a little bit of the money. But the being involved in the community, we've got in Wake Forest, we've got the Wall That Heals coming next week, which is the traveling Vietnam Wall.
Right.
So they're basically setting up I think it's a 1/3 or 1/4 scale and your local listeners here in Fayetteville will appreciate that. But we're sponsors of that, and I'm volunteering for that and being there. When the last one came through in Moore Square Park in Raleigh about 15 years ago, I was working on a project for the VA called the Veterans History Project.
Right.
The VA had a storage building that burned back in 1997, I think it was. So they were asking us to do interviews with people that had been in World War II, Vietnam, and Korea, and getting to meet all of those guys and sit down and talk with them, kind of like we're doing here now for an hour. Just some of the stories were amazing. My favorite story was older gentleman that was one of the first on the beach at Iwo Jima. And he was telling me about his friend that he hadn't seen in 30 years and talked about him and, just everything but cried while I was talking to him.
Right.
And about 15 minutes after he was gone, another guy came up and he was telling a lot of the same stories. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the same guy that the guy before. So I went running all over Moore Square Park, found the other guys, and of course they embraced for about 5 minutes with a big hug, crying everywhere. So I sat him down at a table and I said, so tell me about your experiences in World War II. And I put a microphone on both of them and they talked for 3 hours and 15 minutes. Whoa. And I still have those recordings. So eventually I'm going to write a book about, I'm going to call it the World War II interviews and the Vietnam interviews. And it's basically going to be transcribing those interviews that I did. They were so awesome.
Whoa. Dude, I would love to hear those.
I wanted to join the Air Force. When I grew up, having grown up in Myrtle Beach, I wanted to be an A-10 pilot.
Yeah. And
I went and did my physical, and they looked at me and they said, well, we've got you listed as an as a E4. I said, well, I know what F stands for, but the E has me confused. Yeah. He says, the E merely means even. Mm-hmm. And I said, even what? He says, with all of your health issues, even if there's an invasion, you ain't coming with us. So the government did not want to pay for my medical bills. Is what it amounted to. So.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I feel like you found. Here's the thing: you still found a route to serve the community, correct?
I did, and I love what I do, and my wife has been very supportive over the years because she was the one at home with the kids when I was doing all the shaking hands and kissing babies. Right. And unfortunately, I didn't learn until it was too late that the babies I should have been kissing more were my own. Yeah. So it took me a while, and the nice part about it when my oldest daughter was first born, I have lupus. Okay. And when my oldest daughter was born in 1999, I was very sick from nephritis in my kidneys, but I was not willing to go be treated yet until after she was born. So I started chemotherapy in October of 99, and it was called Cytoxan, which was basically a 1960s cancer drug that killed all of the cells in your body. And so I went through that for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I wasn't even strong enough to hold her after those treatments. And so because of that, I wasn't really close to Shannon. But now when she went away to college, she came back, and our house was the house that all of the high school kids used to hang out at because we had a big back porch and they loved it. And when they were home at Christmas, the first year she was at college, she had all of her buddies from high school there. And I heard Shannon say, well, my wife's a math teacher at Enloe High School in Raleigh. And she said, well, Mama got me through math, but Daddy's the one that taught me how to play the game at college. And so, I finally thought, okay, I did get through. And now we're as close as we've ever been. Yeah. And the 14-year-old is as distant as she's ever been because she's 14.
We talked a little bit about that, didn't
I'm
we?
not cool anymore.
Yeah.
I keep trying to explain to them, I was really cool before they were born.
I think you're still pretty cool. So what else in your world has happened in October? You've had, just in this conversation, you've had chemo that started in October. You've had another day in October where I guess 2 days you made more money than you did in your first 2 years. And now we're in October and you've closed your 100th deal. Yeah. What in the world is up with you in October?
It's called biorhythms.
Okay.
And there are some people that believe in them, some people that don't. But there's a reason August and October are my months.
So you knew.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
When I first started this sentence, you knew where it was going because it's something you've already identified.
Yeah, and when you study what happened, those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it. So one of the things when I write my business plans, I talk about it, and I always set my goals overly high in October. For example, when we were sitting down setting our goals for October this year, I set my goal with about 11 closed transactions. Well, now we've got 18 on the board, and that's because it's October. And of course, again, what happens today is 90 days away. So that meant that August was my productive month.
Right.
And I look back on it, August was very productive because I knew I was going to be out of town every weekend watching football.
Right.
You know, I just got back this past weekend from the Oklahoma-Texas game. I took my dad to the OU-Texas game at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas because he grew up in Oklahoma and never got to go. The one time that they were going to go, there was a screw up with the tickets. So Dad had never been. So with the help of some family, we were able to get tickets. We stayed downtown. We went to, knocking off things on his bucket list because Dad's 72. He's not going to be here forever, and I don't want to miss. I want to make memories so that when he's gone, I can remember how awesome it was. I'm not rushing him out of here, but he's been very influential. There's no major decision that goes on in my life without talking to Dad about it. Unfortunately, I lost Papa a little over 10 years ago. That was my grandfather. Yeah. And that was a huge loss. I was very emotional over that. And that was when I truly, excuse me, that's when I truly started living the mindset that Papa taught me. Mm-hmm. And Dad had been teaching me the same thing. I was very fortunate. If you've ever read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, I grew up with two rich dads and didn't realize it because both Papa and my dad were telling me everything in that book. And unfortunately, Papa wasn't around to see when I finally rented my own building, owned my own company. But I know he's looking down from above. He'd be proud. But I literally, even though he's been gone for over 10 years, I wake up every morning trying to make him and Dad proud. Yeah. That's my goal. Mom has always been the president of the Brian Pate fan club. And I could tell her, Mom, I got a new job shoveling horse manure. Well, you go do that job as best you can. Yeah. She's always been like that. Yeah. And she was the one, she was hard on me, but celebrate. I remember one time Mom was the band director at my middle school in Myrtle Beach, and I was supposed to meet her at a certain time, and she said, if you're late again, I'm leaving you. And so I walked home 3 miles on Highway 17 bypass because I called Mom. I said, you left me. She says, I told you I was going to. And she stood true to her word. Good. I was never late again. Good. Little things like that. It ticks you off when it's during that time. But
you're not going to make that mistake again.
You don't make that mistake again. Yeah.
So it sounds like you learned a lot from your grandfather, but the execution came later.
The execution was because of Dad, because Dad's the one that said you need to get off your butt and do something. Okay. Quit talking about what you want to do and go out and... Have you ever seen the movie Lean on Me with Crazy Joe Clark, the principal?
Terrible movies.
Okay. Got to go see it because there's a part in there where he's connecting with one of the kids that's been dealing cocaine in his school. Okay. And he takes him up to the roof of the building. It's a 5-story building. His kid's name was Sam's. And you can probably YouTube this, Crazy Joe Clark and Sam's, and see this one scene. They're standing on top. He says, you're selling drugs. You're killing yourself slowly. What I want you to do is jump off the building, face plant, and do it expeditiously. And that's kind of like what Dad told me. He says, I want you to quit talking about all these things you're going to do and go out and do it expeditiously. And that's the reason, in 2012... In July of 2012, I was managing for another company in Raleigh, and I had told the general manager that I did not get along with, but for the record, I told her, I said, I'm going on vacation. I'm going on a cruise with my wife. We're going to be gone for 9 days, and I'm going to be unavailable for this time period. And I gave her that notice in March, and in May, she scheduled a manager's meeting that was, quote unquote, mandatory. I'm doing air quotes for you that can't see. Yeah. And I called her, I said, I'm not going to be there. Yeah. And she says, you don't have a choice. It's mandatory. Yeah. I said, well, then you're going to have a real problem when you show up and I'm not there. So don't call me because you won't be able to reach me because I'll be on a boat. Yep. And she kept telling me. So I knew I was on thin ice. Yeah. And I called Dad and told him about it. I said, what do you think I should do? He says, it's your family. Your family comes first. Yes. She's trying to test you. Yep. And so I kind of played dirty a little bit, and I said, remember that because of my lupus, I'm legally handicapped in North Carolina. So if you fire me because I'm missing time because I'm trying to get R&R, I might have a complaint. And, of course, it went, as the old joke goes, and that's when the fight started. Yeah. And so finally on September 18th, my daughter's birthday of 2012, I left Fondwell Morrissey, and it was a tough it was again a very emotional moment. And Dad told me, he says, look at it this way: you get to work for yourself again and quit worrying about everybody else. Because I had the DJ business, so I was making enough money to survive. But I finally had the opportunity to get in the real estate business and really do what I wanted to do with it.
Yeah,
and that was huge. And so I was able to see what others did wrong, what people did right, and I was able to execute. So in my first year, all by myself, as lousy as I was with paperwork, I had a GCI of about $80,000, which a lot of people would kill for.
Yeah,
so,
especially their first year.
Yeah, and I got more time with my kids, and
so it's a blessing.
Yeah, I've learned since then, and I don't remember who it was. I think it was Rich Carpentieri, who's a Bold coach with Keller Williams, and I got really close to him during Bold because I was an interim team leader at the time, and he could tell that I was really stressed because I was managing an office with over 300 agents while trying to run my own team of, I think we had 5 or 6 people at that time. And he says, Brian, you need to understand when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. Yeah. And that really resonated with me. And so I leaned on Rich, and Rich laughs at me because I love making birthday calls. It's the first thing I do in the morning. I have all of on my calendar, it pops up birthday calls, and then the notes have all of the names and the phone numbers so I can just directly dial it. And I call Rich Carpentieri on his birthday every year and wish him happy birthday. He says, everybody else sends me a Facebook message or a text or something like that. I love the fact that you call me at 7 a.m. to make sure my ass is out of bed.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I love that similarity because I love doing happy birthdays as well.
Yeah.
Video on Messenger.
It works great. It's awesome.
Yeah, and it separates you from everyone else.
Well, and I've been known to take my phone for some of my closest friends. I've been known to take my phone and record myself actually singing. And if you heard me sing, you'd know I was a DJ for 25 years. And text it to them, and it brightens a day. And ultimately, people will remember you not for what you did for them, but how you made them feel.
Right.
And if I can bring some light to somebody's day, then it's been worth doing. And that's what I do with my social media, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter and Instagram. I very rarely get into all of the battles that people get into because nobody ever looked at my Facebook post and said, Brian's right. I've changed my mind politically. It's never going to happen.
Right.
We arguing over it is a complete waste of time. We break each other down, and we don't at least lift each other up.
Yep.
And there are people occupying time in your head that don't need to be occupying
100%.
it. And I've got a friend that she's the bartender at my favorite restaurant in Wake Forest, and I go see her at least once a week because she sent me a ton of business, but I love her to death. She's like a sister to me.
Yeah.
And we'd make sure that she was always okay. But she looked at me yesterday when I was eating lunch. She says, I'm just logging off of Facebook for a month because I can't stand it anymore. I'm ready to strangle people.
Yeah.
And if you get to that point, you're taking it way too serious.
Yes, agreed.
Life is
so agree with that.
Life's a dance, and you learn as you go.
Yeah.
And that's a country song from years ago.
Yeah.
But
finish it. No.
I'm not singing. No, we don't want to drive people away.
Yeah.
But the fact that so many people live their life being miserable. I'm very fortunate. I have 2 jobs that I love.
Yes.
I have a life that many people would kill to have. And I get to have an impact on other people's career. Standing the end of classes is always fun because people get to come up and, I had one of your guys, Charleston, that took a class from me a while back, and he came up to me before it started. He says, man, because of you, I reevaluated and I started saving everything, and I invested in 2 properties. The guy's awesome. And he's one of these people. He looks like the superhero that you buy off of the toy thing. He's a big guy and loves the fact that he's starting out early.
Yes.
With his financial freedom.
Yep.
I've got a young man named Jacob Pazak that Jacob worked for me with the DJ company, and he went to nuke school in Charleston, and he's now on the USS North Dakota, and he's one of those guys that because he runs the nuclear reactor on the USS North Dakota, if you say, well, where were you? He says, I can neither confirm it or deny. He's one of those guys. But Jacob while he worked with me, I was preaching, save, 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 pay yourself first.
Right.
And so he's put $5,500 a year back into a Roth IRA every year since he was 18. And the kid's now got more money in his retirement account than most people that are age 40 have.
Right.
And he's going to be able to retire from the Navy after 30 years at age 50 and do whatever the heck he wants to because he's leveraged his money early and made the right decisions. So many people wait till it's too late. But even if it's late, I'm not saying don't start because it's late. I'm getting ready to turn 50 next year, and we're just upgrading it.
Yes,
you know, you've got there's some great benefits from that the government gives us with being able to, you know, put $6,500 into a Roth or $15,000 into an IRA or $24,000 into a 401k. Take advantage of that and put it all back that you can. And in the words of Dave Ramsey, live now like nobody else does, so that in 20 years you can live like nobody else does.
Yes, exactly. So if I step back and kind of look at everything you're doing, it looks like it almost mirrors what with you and I were both in that same class with Bo McKinney, yeah. Thank you. Minkiti.
Bo Minkiti.
Yes.
Awesome class, by the way.
Amazing class. And one of the biggest things I took out of that is impact.
Yeah.
And everything, and using real estate, honestly, as a vehicle for more impact.
Yes.
And if I step back and look at everything that you're doing, that's kind of what I'm getting from you.
Well, I believe that every transaction is an impact.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of agents, you know, I once heard an agent that I was managing tell her client, it's only $10,000. And I'm thinking to myself, then you freaking pay it.
Right.
Do you know how much money you have to have in a savings account to make $10,000 in 1 year?
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This is the real estate is the single largest investment most people will ever make in their entire lives.
Yep.
And most realtors, unfortunately, it's kind of like Jeff Foxworthy. They can't make fun of them unless you are one, and I are one.
Right.
Most realtors spend most of their day worrying about their income than worrying about people.
Yes.
And Tommy Fonville, when I started in this business, I asked him if he had any advice for me. And it was my very first night of teaching class. And I looked at him and said, you got any last minute advice? He says, yep, dress nice, let them out early. They'll love you. And I kind of laughed, and he says, really, if you take care of people, the money will take care of itself.
Right.
And that was 24 years ago this month that he said that to me. And it took a couple of years in the business for me to really get it.
Right.
And I had a client, my life-changing moment in the real estate business was a client that, husband and wife, that I had DJ'd their wedding. We'd been friends for a long time. He ended up working with me as one of my DJs eventually. They bought a townhouse because they couldn't afford anything more. So I found a for sale by owner for like a $62,000 townhouse in the middle of North Raleigh. They didn't have enough money to pay for the home inspection, so I paid for the home inspection out of my own pocket. They didn't have enough money to pay for the $65 termite inspection, so I paid for that out of my own pocket. After all was done, I think I probably netted about $200.
Right.
But when I slid the keys across to that woman and tears filled her eyes, and I still get a little bit of a waver in my voice because Tracy and Julie have been friends now for almost 30 years. Yeah. And Tracy is, to put it this way, Tracy is one of those guys that when I was in chemotherapy, he'd been working with me in the DJ business for about 5 years. While I was in chemotherapy, he drove me because I had my chemotherapy on Friday, so by Saturday I felt like crap.
Right.
And so to play Saturday night was often a huge struggle.
Wow.
I remember one particular show, I was underneath the table throwing up into a bucket, calling songs for him to play. And he drove, I can't tell you how many times he drove me home from things like that when I could barely stay awake. If it hadn't been for Tracy, I'm not sure that I would have survived my chemotherapy. Wow. And I don't think he'll ever understand. But that relationship was created by the purchase of their home.
Right.
Because they knew that I had their best interests at heart every time. And they ended up selling that one and buying another one that they still live into this day because they're living the same concept of pay it down, use that for your leverage. And they've got a son at Appalachian State and a daughter that's at East Carolina. Yeah. And they're awesome kids. and they're going on their own paths. And Julie's a teacher, and Tracy's a graphic artist, and he's really good and has often done extracurricular artistry for me so that we could have a logo for something and things like that. It's truly one of the coolest stories of my life, because I had an impact on somebody that also had an impact on me.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool, because as I do more of these, this is what I come to find over and over and over is this. Yes, we love the business. Yes, we love to be in business. And overall, it's much bigger than us. It's the how can we leave our footprint here in this universe, right? And this impact that we can make. And I'm going to go back to Grant Cardone just real quick. What was the one thing you took out? Because I know his mission is to really make a big impact and really 10x people's thoughts. What was the one thing personally coaching with him that you got out of coaching with him? The one thing you think about?
If I missed a phone call, it was a $500 fine to the Wake County Humane Society.
Really?
I wrote one check because I found out he was serious, because the next time I was late, he says, you don't have to write a check this month, but you don't have to worry about the call next week. And it was a real impact. And he's one of those guys, he's so powerful when he speaks. Trash mouth, but I'm okay with that. And I think the people that follow him are.
Right.
And he took me from, you heard me talk in my class about, you are not a realtor, you are a business owner.
Yes.
And he was really the one that shook the tree, shook the core in me. And the best thing that I learned from him is quit telling yourself you can't.
Yeah.
If you hear, if it is to be, it's up to me.
Yes.
And why not me and all of that stuff. And what it comes down to is, if I worked for me, would I hire myself again tomorrow knowing what I did today? And that was a very enlightening moment when I said, probably not, because I'd only worked really about 22 hours that week.
Yeah.
And I'd hit my numbers.
Yeah.
But I missed the opportunity to double my numbers.
And the potential.
And that's where his coaching was different for me. That's where it changed my career.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, and Darren Kittleson was a part of this, because I was doing the Cardone coaching while Darren Kittleson was teaching a bold class here in Raleigh. So this was 2013 or 14, somewhere in that ballpark. And Darren looked at me and says, when are you going to do your bold 100? Not, are you going to do your bold 100? Right. And I said, well, I don't know if I've got enough time to really make 100 calls with everything I've got going on. He says, you're a liar, and walked away from it. I'm like, wait a minute. No, the one thing I'm known for is telling people exactly what I think, and I get criticized for it often because I'm very blunt.
Right.
If you don't want to know the answer to the question, you better not ask me.
Right.
Because I don't mince words and I don't sugarcoat.
Sure.
And I went up to him and said, don't you dare call me a liar. He says, okay, then you're just a wuss. And he kept walking.
He knew your buttons.
And he knew my buttons.
Yeah.
And he says, look, you got a lot of talent. You are a $20 million producer masquerading as a $5 million producer because you're too freaking lazy to trust yourself and to make a phone call and get told no just because you're interrupting their stream for the day. He says, I got a guy that makes a bold 100 every day of the week. When he wants to be challenged, he has his team make 1,000 calls. So don't tell me you can't do 100 in one day.
Right.
So I took that to heart, and I did a bold 100 5 days in a row the last week before that bold. And when I walked up to him, he says, that's the way it's supposed to be done. And then Rich Carpentieri, who I talked about earlier, he was the one that said, if you don't have enough time to do your recruiting meetings and your phone calls, the only person suffering is you.
Yeah. Who's your Grant Cardone now?
I have a coach that has asked me not to mention his name because he doesn't really coach one-on-one anymore.
Okay.
But I will tell you, it is a name in the real estate business that anybody you had to be around in the late 90s to remember his name.
Okay.
But he put it this way. There are people
What does it rhyme with?
I will, if you're really good and you want to trace the lineage, Tom Ferry, Brian Buffini, and what's the other guy's name? That's the big trainer that does all the national stuff. I can't think of his name. Anyway,
Corcoran.
Corcoran. All of them are disciples of this person. So it's kind of like the Bill Belichick down to Bill Parcells and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google.
You're gonna have to if you want to play if you want to know it that bad, you can do that. But I promised I would not mention his name publicly.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so since we are like super tight on time, there are a few questions I want to throw at you. Okay.
Okay. Is this like the rapid fire on the game show?
A little bit.
Okay. Rock and roll.
All right. So, do you have a favorite failure that you believe has set you up for success?
Ooh. There have been so many of them.
That's why you have to find the favorite.
Okay, you're going to laugh at this.
Good.
1992 National Shag Dance Championship. If you want to watch it, go Google or go to YouTube and type in Brian Pate Shag Dance.
Oh my gosh.
And click on the dance with Pat Foles. Best partner I ever had in dancing. We finished second in the National Shag Championship after 4 records by 1 point. Ugh. I'm livid about it. I'm still pissed about it, and it's 26 years later. Because, damn it, we were good.
Yes.
We were awesome.
And that has pushed some real competition in your
Just for the record, that's 26 years and about 120 pounds ago.
That's going to be the thumbnail to this video.
Yeah.
Screenshot of that. All right, so what have you gotten better at saying no to?
I get calls every day with people asking me to sponsor events, and I've had to choose when to say yes and when to say no. Absolutely. Where there's real value. I have to actually get something out of my investment.
Awesome. Yep. What profession other than your own would be fun to attempt?
I would be a NASCAR driver in a heartbeat.
That came out so quick.
I wanted to be a NASCAR driver from the time I was about 5 years old. Okay.
Let's do it.
Geeking out. You ready?
Go for it.
I have a NASCAR press kit from 1977 that when we moved from Myrtle Beach from Biloxi to Myrtle Beach in, I think it was New Year's Eve of 1978. And the sports editor at Dad's new newspaper, I did not want to move from Biloxi because I had Todd Davis and Chad Bath were my 2 best friends, and I'd finally connected with somebody after moving around so much. The way that my dad got me to go to Myrtle Beach was that he sold it and said, we're only an hour and a half from Darlington. I'll take you to a real NASCAR race. I have a press kit, the entire press kit from the 1977 NASCAR season, because that's what Dad gave me in order to convince me to go. And I read it all the way while we were driving from Biloxi to Myrtle Beach. I have a picture. For those of you that are NASCAR fans, I have a photo of Benny Parsons when he still had hair. I have a picture of Harry Gant at the age of 32. I have a photo of Richard Petty 40 years ago, and it's like one of my prized possessions. Yes. I still keep it. But I wanted to be a NASCAR driver, and Dad said, you're not allowed to drive NASCAR until you get a college degree. And so I decided I was going to go to Georgia Tech. I was going to get a mechanical engineering degree, and I was going to go work for NASCAR in Charlotte. Then I got to Algebra 1. And it was holy crap! Yeah. This is math with letters. And I got through Algebra 1. Algebra 2, my math teacher was Linda Vereen. And Mom, as I told you, Mom was close friends with everybody because she used to teach at the school. Miss Vereen called for a meeting because I had a 97, a 98, and a 97 on my tests, but I had a class average of like 85. And she says, well, Brian doesn't turn in his homework. And I said, well, Miss Vereen, isn't homework for the purpose of making sure you understand how to do it? She says, yes. I said, well, if I've got 97, 98, 97 on my tests, why do I need to do the homework if I'm proven that I know how to do it? My dad popped me upside the head. Don't disrespect your teacher like that. So it's quite different from today.
Sure. Right.
Then my junior year, I hit trigonometry. And it was like, oh my God, this was it. And so all of a sudden,
was already out.
My grades started dropping, and all of my other grades dropped because I was so focused on trigonometry, and I just could not get it. And I never got to calculus.
Right.
So there was no way I was getting to mechanical engineering. So I was kind of like Tom Cruise in Risky Business that had the opportunity to go to the Ivy League school. It says, well, looks like community college. You know, that's kind of the way I ended up. But no, I for my 50th birthday next year, I'm going to a race car driving school so that I can drive. That's what I'm going to do.
And that's what I was going to ask. So where are you pushing that passion to, right? Because I know you told a
I
story.
want to survive to 50, which is next July 24th.
Oh, you got it. We just have to get through October.
We got to get through October.
Oh my gosh.
I just need to get to next August. I'll be good.
Yes. Because you mentioned a story that you had enough cash to buy this Corvette.
Yeah.
And you decided not to.
Yeah.
So, in knowing that you had the passion of NASCAR,
I need to say that, by the way, on this, because I have, this is my grandfather's statement, and it sums up everything that I talk about in all of my classes. And he used to say, when your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. When your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. If you don't learn anything else from listening to all this, listen to that.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I don't know what the next passion's going to be. You know, when I retire, I want to have a motor home, and I want to go to every NASCAR race in one season.
How are you gonna turn that into a business where you can write off all those miles?
I don't know. I'm going to figure out a way.
Yeah, I know you will.
I'm going to figure out a way.
I know you will.
I got a buddy named Mark Limmer that's an announcer for Monster Energy, so maybe I can get hooked up with that.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah.
I tried working for Monster.
He's the announcer at all the live racetracks.
Yeah.
He's the MC on the stage where the bands play pre-race and all of that stuff. It's a great job, and Limmer's perfect for it. Limmer's like a 55 to 60-year-old surfer dude with the long blonde hair. He's from Pensacola Beach, Florida. And he used to DJ, I think it was Club La Vila and Spinnakers in Panama City Beach. Met him through the DJ world years ago. His nickname is Surfer Mark. That's his, if you want to follow him online, at Surfer Mark.
Got it.
But Limmer's great at that, and I'd love to do something like that.
You'd be great.
I love sports.
Yes.
You know, ultimately, my other dream job would be to be the PA announcer at Florida State football. I love FSU.
Yes.
Mom and Dad met in school at FSU. I grew up with Garnet and
Is
Gold
that on
in
your
my blood.
personal plan?
No, it's not, because it's one of those things that I don't know that I will ever move to Tallahassee. It's just not on my radar right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
It would be fun as hell.
So what are you driving? So sorry, I'm a car guy.
Go ahead.
What are you driving now to feel that urge, that explosiveness of the NASCAR world?
Well, it's kind of funny. I had my midlife crisis a few years ago.
Perfect. Love it.
And my German Shepherd at the time, her name was Daisy. And my wife and I used to joke that she was my girlfriend, because Eileen says that, Eileen, my smoking hot wife, used to say that I paid more attention to Daisy than I did to her. And so we referred to as my girlfriend. So I came home in a Corvette.
Okay.
And Eileen looks at me and she says,
"What kind of Corvette?"
It was a CR1.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Nice. Yes.
It's gorgeous.
Job. Love it.
So the guy that ran the dealership let me bring it home to show it to her.
Okay.
Because, you got to sell it.
Sure.
And she walks out. She says, "It only has 2 seats." I said, "Well, I only need 2 seats, one for me and one for my girlfriend."
Huh.
Well, one of our neighbors was listening and says, "I can't believe you treat your wife like that." It was hilarious.
Yeah.
So I went. She says, "It needs to have 4 doors. You still have to be able to carry your daughters if you need to. Also, all 4 of us need to be able to ride it."
Trunk.
Okay, fine. So I was like, we can tie them to the muffler and drag them.
It's got enough power to
they
pull
probably
a small
deserve
dolly.
it. Yeah. So I went back. And I talked to my buddy, because I've got a friend of mine named Johnny Dudley. He is the car guy, and has given me advice on every car I've ever bought since I've lived in Raleigh. And again, met through the DJ business. He was the DJ at Cheers nightclub when I was DJing there, so we DJed together for some years. And he says, "Go down to the Mercedes dealership and test drive the C300 and the E350." And so I went down. Okay. And then I saw this little bitty 4-door sports coupe that was a C250. So I have a 2014 Mercedes C250. And the reason I bought it is because my coach, Mika Fox, said, "What is your goal for the end of the year?" I said, "To have enough cash to buy a Mercedes, because I've always wanted one, but I've never had one." And she says, "Okay, that's the why. Here we go."
Yeah.
And she coached me, and all of a sudden I went from $83,000 in GCI to $265,000 in GCI with enough cash that I was able to buy the Mercedes.
The one outside?
So, the one outside.
Oh, so cool.
And I like it enough that we're actually talking about getting me the new Ford Ranger comes out this year, the 2019. They're building the Ford Ranger pickup truck again. And I want to get one of the 4 doors of those as my tootle around day-to-day car and put the Mercedes in the garage so that it can. I want to be the old man at about 75 pulling out the vintage car, driving around, people going, "Damn, look at that. Original everything." And, it's got, it's you sit down in this thing and the seats are the Mercedes leather feeling. Oh my God.
Sponsored by Mercedes.
They're going to want it. You should have sold a sponsorship for this one.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
And then when you step on the gas, it just kind of wraps your arms around. It's like,
that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. When I first got into real estate and, you build a vision board, the first car that I put on there, oddly enough, was a Mercedes S550.
Right.
There's something about that car.
Great car.
I've not yet bought it or anything.
It's also a $90,000 sedan.
Yes.
But it's a great car.
There's something about it. The way that the fender rolls over the back wheel a little bit.
Yeah.
There's something about it.
No doubt.
All
So
right.
something about those European lines.
Yes.
Okay, next question.
All right. Purchases of less than $100 that have most improved your life.
Say that again now.
Purchases of less than $100 that have most improved your life.
Wow. Purchase under $100 that's improved my life.
Most improved your life.
Most improved my life. I would say my headphones.
Okay.
I have a cheap pair of headphones that I use at home when I'm walking because I sweat like crazy. I got my nice JBLs for when I'm sitting in the room zoning out on everything. But when I'm walking, I have a set of headphones, and that allows me to listen to all of the music and stuff. And it was my old backup set of headphones in the DJ business when I sold it in 2014. It's pretty much the only thing I've got left that I keep from it. But yeah, the headphones give me the opportunity to listen to all of I'm a huge podcast and Audible listener, so you can also sell sponsorship to Audible, by the way. But the headphones would be my. I know that's not exciting for most people, but for me,
most improved your life.
Right? It was huge. It was huge for me.
Yeah,
huge for me.
Gotcha. So what's playing right now? Music. We'll go there.
Music is, before I teach, I always listen to "Remember the Name" by Fort Minor, and that's the one I was singing earlier. 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power and will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain gives you 100% reason to remember my name.
Boom,
boom,
boom.
Mic drop.
So what about Audible? What's playing on Audible right now?
Let's see. I finished a book on Audible on the way down here this morning. So the next listen... Okay, I don't want to turn off airplane. The next listen will be The Ultimate Question 2.0 by Fred Reichheld. I read the original version. This is the book that designed, and you see a lot of companies using it much more widely these days. First version of the book came out in about 2006, and it was how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend the Pate Realty Group? Anything below an 8 is a failure. And so it's talking about that. So this is the updated version that he's added, and he talks about the online usage of it. So that's the next one I'm going to listen to.
You know what I found? So I use the 1 to 10 a lot, and now I'm saying, so on a scale of 1 to 10, without choosing 5, blah, 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 blah. Because a lot of people default to 5.
Correct. Well, and the problem is you've got to ask them other questions. You can't just ask them one question.
Yes.
Because if somebody answers 5 on everything, it's a throwaway.
That's right.
But if they tell you, that's why the stars on like an online review are so important. Because if they say, well, he was a 5 in terms of his knowledge, a 5 in terms of the experience, but a 4 on how easy was he to get a hold of.
Yes.
Even that 4 is a failure for me, because that means something they thought enough about that to say this wasn't up to par compared to everything else.
Yes.
And I even, I call it tree shaking. But Marcia and Scott a couple of weeks ago pulled me into a private meeting, said, "Hey, you're not communicating with the sellers enough. You need to be creating more of the love. They need to feel more of that." And they were right.
Right.
Some that's the biggest thing in my team. Everybody has permission to hold me accountable or anybody else. And we have to be friends enough that holding someone accountable doesn't feel like criticism.
Yes.
And it's very important for that to be, because otherwise, if it's two people that don't like each other and they say, "Hey, you forgot to do this," stop criticizing me. It's not this. It's not right.
Right.
It's got to be. It's got to be everybody's got to be able to hold everybody accountable no matter who it is, and that includes me.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, I work for Logan. Logan does not work for me. It's Logan's job to tell me what to do each day.
So that's why I wish we had more time, because I'd like to know what the interview process looked like in your world in order to bring the right culture. Don't tell me just they come on and they got.
I hate to say this, but I did not use career visioning or any of that stuff.
Right.
Logan worked at the daycare where my oldest daughter went beginning her second year.
Yeah.
And Logan became family very quickly because I could tell how much passion she had for other people, especially children.
Sure.
And when she and her husband bought their house from me in 2013, and she knew the county roads like the back of her hand. She says, don't follow your GPS. Go this way instead. It'll be faster.
Yeah.
And I said, you'd really be great at real estate. Well, that's Joe's old house, and that's Bob's old house. She could tell you who'd lived there. And I was like, you really need to get a real estate license. And God love her. She got through the class, and it took her a couple of times taking the state exam. And but she finally got her license. She joined us as a buyer's agent. It was very stressful for her because her profile was that of an admin, not as a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
She needs that regular paycheck to keep her comfort level. So when we made her an admin, she blossomed.
Yeah.
It was the right person at the right place at the right time.
Yes.
So I hired good people. And I put them in the right place.
Yes.
Stacy, who's our buyer side and does all of our HR, does our banking and everything. Stacy came from an environmental water company that basically she was the HR at the company. She took her class, and I told her, I said, just come on board with us. Because she was obviously right for the admin role, tested off the charts for it. So we put her in that, and I can give her a little bit, as long as I don't pile things on them that they feel like is unnecessary, they're okay with it. But when they feel like, when I'm out of town and I call Stacy, hey, can you look at my calendar and get this on it?
Right.
Or like this morning, I called Logan and said, if you've got this guy's business card, please set up a meeting for me week after next and put it in my calendar. She's got the access to it.
Perfect.
They literally manage my life, and I could not do it without them. I mean, Logan found a photo of our team photo from when we had hired the two buyers agents and all of that. And she says, do you realize you and I are the only one that are left?
Yeah.
And I texted her back and I said, yeah, thanks for being with me through the good and the tough times. Yeah. And she sent me back the little heart emojis.
Yeah.
And, they are family. Yeah. Their children are my family.
So in essence, would it be fair that you're looking at everyone and as like everything's data? So depending on whatever their actions are before getting into real estate, you're just kind of watching that depending on the person to see.
I want to hire good people first that care about other people. If you're just chasing a paycheck, you're done.
Yep.
And you've got to have a level of intelligence, because empowering someone means that you're giving them not only the right to make the decision, but that you are investing in the knowledge for them to make the decision.
That's right.
And that's where a lot of people fail. And so it's got to be someone that is smart enough to keep up with spinning plates so that one doesn't fall, and to be able to recognize that's the next one that's going to slow down. I got to catch up.
Yes.
And so they've got to dip into the buckets as far as what happens.
Gotcha. So since I've kind of peppered you with questions, what question do you have for me?
I want to know what you're going to do with the beard, man.
It's going.
So you're really gonna cut it in November?
Mm-hmm. But what you and I talked about, it might be a good opportunity to raise some money depending on how the beard should be shaved.
You decide where it goes and start a GoFundMe or whatever you're doing for the fundraiser, and I'll give you your first $100 towards it.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I want to see mutton chops. For my money.
Okay, so that would
I want to see mutton chops. Yeah. Mutton chops,
I gotta
baby.
say X amount of time too, because there's no way I'm rocking this thing for a year.
No, dude, I think you should rock the mutton chops at least.
Not even a little bit.
At least for you need to come up and visit me for the day. I'll take you to lunch. You guys you can bring a couple of agents up and shadow me while you got your.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Because that way you'll look like, what was the dude in Ron Burgundy? That was the guy with all of the.
Yeah.
Oh God, not the perfume. What do you call it? Colognes.
Yes.
That had the horrid smelling cologne that had the mutton chops. That's all you.
Yeah.
That's your Halloween costume.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. And I'm wondering, man, what if there was another option on there that said I would match all the money combined if I grew it for another year? or something like that. Like, where's the? Like,
How's your wife feel about the
she's ready.
beard?
She's like, I miss your face. Okay. I can't see your face.
Then don't do that.
Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's dangerous.
Ohana means family.
Yeah.
Family means no one gets left behind.
You're right. Listen, you got me in this mastermind thinking about what's next with this dang beard.
I love it.
Thank you, sir. So what question do you have for everyone listening, and then we'll end on that?
My big question for you is, everybody says, what are you going to do today? I want to know, what are you going to do tomorrow? Don't just be working, be productive. Mm-hmm. And what are you going to accomplish? What's the next big thing on your list? Maybe you're a brand new agent and you just want to get a listing appointment. Door knocking is back in effect. Mm-hmm. And all the script is have you thought about selling your home now or in the near future? And if you knock on 150 doors, you're going to get one person that says, well, yeah, we've thought about it. Or if they say, and remember that they may not say yes. They may say, well, that's a yes.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of inexperienced agents miss those opportunities. And that's where the top end flourishes.
Yes. So don't think about what you're doing today. Think about what you're going to do tomorrow.
What you doing next?
And
next up.
Throw it on the calendar.
Next up.
Yeah.
It's just and it doesn't matter how many times you get beaten. Just think of Conor McGregor, who's the MMA fighter.
Yeah.
He's now been beaten twice in a row, and he's already talking about his next fight that he's probably going to lose again. He's going to make a buttload of money in it. And by the way, for those of you that are originally from up north, buttload is an official unit of measurement in the South. It's quarter pound, half pound, buttload. There's another one after it that I won't say.
All right, so where can they find you?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Pate Realty. On Twitter is probably the best place to follow me for daily stats, real estate information, at DJ Brian Pate, and that's BRIAN, as my mother says, the way God meant for it to be spelled. I'm on Instagram at the letter B, the letter P, the number 8, Realty, REALTY. If you Google Brian Pate Realtor, we control the first 3 pages.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that I have is there's a guy that's actually a really good comic book artist named Brian Pate, who is in Orlando, Florida, that runs a lot of comic book conventions. Nice guy. I've talked to him a couple of times.
I'm about to say,
he's the only one that appears. He's got BrianPate.com.
Yeah.
So, because I was a little late on it. But those types of things, if you just Google me, you'll find me. And, of course, we've got our classes. If you're a realtor that wants to take a CE course or a training course, that's all available on the website. And that's Brian Pate Seminars with an S on the end.com.
Yes.
And my entire teaching schedule is there. And it's listed all the way from October 10th all the way through today's date, all the way through the end of the year, and then we'll start posting next year's classes. And
awesome.
That's if you scroll down to the bottom, it's got the post-licensing courses. It's got all the CE, and then I'm also available to do business planning clinics and things like that.
Perfect.
And so I'm always the teaching is what I love to do.
Obviously.
And I enjoy it, and I learn as much as the students that are in the classroom do.
So for everyone listening, if you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe, because there will be more coming down the pipeline.
And can I plug my own podcast?
There's another podcast out there. Go.
So I got 2 podcasts out there. For those of you that want to hear what's going on in the town of Wake Forest, I have What's Up Wake Forest. We do that one about once every 2 weeks. And then we have another one that's called Brian Pate on Real Estate.
Yes.
And not only can you find it on iTunes and Libsyn and all that, but you can also find it on YouTube so that you can actually listen to it on your phone in the car if you want to, or you can just hit your podcast button on your phone and take a listen. So Brian Pate on Real Estate, and we'll have to get you up to Wake Forest to come join me on my podcast, and then we'll have a couple of cigars out on the back porch when we're done.
That'd be awesome, because because one of the biggest things that I would love to cover with you is more technical, action-packed stuff that we can do action-oriented in investing world. And that's the stuff that you guys talk about on the Brian Pate Real Estate podcast.
Talk a lot about investing. We do a lot of interviewing with agents, and we talk a lot about what's going on with rules and regulations. It's kind of a hodgepodge of information. It meanders its way through the real estate, but it's all real estate related. So whether you're an agent or you're a buyer or a seller or a potential buyer or seller or an investor, it gives you the opportunities to have the discussion.
So don't wait for the next time we get on a podcast in order for you guys to listen to what that investing sounds like, because it's packed with value. Go ahead and go to his podcast and subscribe. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Let's go get some lunch.
Let's go eat.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.